In this video, we're going to focus on how to use fetch and then fetching CSV file, and then we're going to draw it immediately so it will be instantly impacted and shown on the chart without the tools such as Papa Parse or D3 JavaScript library. So this can be very useful as well. So let's start to explore how to do this right now. In this video, we're going to focus on how to connect a CSV file with Chart.js. And if you've seen some of my other videos where I show you how to do it with different tools that we use, like the chart, or not the Chartjs library, but the D3 library we use for that. We have another one where we can use Papa Parse as well. However, we can do it directly, which is probably the best way to do it without any dependencies. So to do this, we need to have a default or just a simple CSV file. And right now I have one here. This is data.csv. Quick note here, I'm using a local host. You should have a local host or web server, or you're on your hosting itself, because we're going to connect with files. And for this, it is required to have this connection, or else it will not work. Alright, what we're going to do is basically we want to draw the chart and make the chart load immediately the data. So let's start with that, and what we're going to do here first is get the default code. Just go to Getting Started or chartjs3.com Getting Started, and then in here we have a nice chunk of code that we can use. Copy this, and if you want to understand what this does, please check out this video here. So then I'm going to paste this in here, and once I paste this in here, I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to put it in here, or at least for me. That's not necessary for you, but that's for me. We save that, refresh, now we have our chart. Alright, so we have this drawn now. But what we're going to do now is we're going to use the fetch API, and using the fetch API means that we need to load first the data that we're going to fetch, which is this, and then we should load the chart. So the chart can load first. Alright, so how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, let's make this a line chart that's eventually nicer. Here I will just give it a tension of 0.4. Refresh, there we already have this. Later on we're going to fine tune this because we want to duplicate this and have a total of 3 different lines here. You can see here there's basically 3 different companies here. You can see here this is the year, indicating every year, and then maybe the stock value or the value of the company, and then you can see here Chart.js, Chartflakes, and small chart. Alright, very simple stuff. So let's start to work with this. So what we're going to do here is basically we need to create what we call a fetch API here. And so for doing this, we're going to use a async. And what we want to do first is we want to make sure that this will not load until we have the data that we need. Alright, so what we're going to do here is very simple. First of all, we're going to say here new function, and this function is called the draw chart. And basically this is the function that draws the chart. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to say here async, and then we say function draw the chart. Alright, so what really happens here is simply this. It will read this, it will understand it needs to load this specific function, but it knows it's an async here. So meaning that it will expect certain values as well. So I'm going to put this basically, or enclose this with a function. And then all I'm going to do here is just an indentation in itself. Alright, so now we have that. And we're not done here, of course, but if we would save this here, probably not much will happen. You can see here it still works decent. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to work with the part where we eventually want to extract the data, and this is really important. So in here, what we're going to do is the following. We're going to create a fetch, and our fetch here will be async, or basically an async function as well. And here we could say this fetching would be get data. So we want to get the data or extract the data from the CSV file. But to do this, what we're going to say here is first of all we say constant, and then we say response. So we want a response back, and then we say equal await, waiting for the fetch. So we're going to fetch. And what exactly are we going to fetch here? Alright, so with this we're going to fetch basically this specific link here. So I'm going to copy this link, and what we could do is we can put it in here, then it needs to be a string, or if you want it you can say URL equals constant, this equals that, make sure that's between there, and then we just copy that and put it in here as a variable. So one or the other, it doesn't matter. Alright, so now we have this. What we want to do now is once we got that, we want to say here constant. Basically, we're waiting for the response. If the response is positive or it works, we say here the following. We say constant, and then we can say here data points and equal await. We're waiting for the response, and then R. So this is very important because normally, if you saw my other videos, I'm using .json. Here we don't use .json, we do .text. And the reason why we do .text, because it is not a JSON file that needs to be parsed into readable JavaScript. No, it is a text file or CSV file that needs to be converted into basic text so it's readable for JavaScript. Very important. So this is what we're doing here. Once we've got that, then we can start to look what the response will be. Alright, so we're going to check here what our response will be. So what we can say here is, well, we can say console.log, and then we can say here the data point. We want to grab the data point, and if we save this, go back here and refresh, nothing happens here. Open up here, alright, nothing happens there as well, I realize. So we have to just check, probably we need to activate this one. What we can do here is the following. So what we could do here maybe just for now is just a quick button, just to trigger it so it will start to recognize this. So we say here a button, and later on we're going to remove that. And then we can say here on click equals, and then we grab this specific function for now, just to make sure that we trigger this one. This is just to validate. We will never, or afterwards we won't be using this at all. So I say check. Alright, if I save this now, refresh, we have a button here. Click on it, and then you can see we get all of this data nicely. Here's the thing, we get it now as a very simple text. This is not an array. There's nothing here. It doesn't understand exactly what it is, except that it's a basic text. So what we want to do now is to break that down. And what we need to do here is basically break this data point, or basically what it is here is a table of data. So maybe we could say here, table data. That's maybe even more appropriate. And we refresh, it still works. Alright, so we have this table of data, and then we have all of these rows in here that we want to pinpoint. So that's what we need to do next. We're going to pinpoint, or at least we're going to cut it or split it into independent rows so we can start to work with it, because then we have all these arrays. So that's what we're going to do next. So what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to say here, we're going to grab the item here. We say this constant. Oh well, we have the constant already. I'm going to grab this, and then we say this, or we can even fine tune it into splitting it into rows. What would be the right term for this? We can say here table. Maybe that's the right term. Table equals, because I don't want to adjust this. I want to have a separate one just to make sure. And then, well, table data will be, we will convert this table data into a table. And this table we will say dot split, and we will split it based on the value here, which is a new line. All right, so quotations, and then a new line. Every new line, we will split this. And once we did this, we can say here console.log, and then we say here grab the table, save that. I'm going to hide this one. We don't need that one for now. Refresh and press on that. Now we get arrays. All right, every single line here is considered a separate array, including this one here. You can say here, okay, how is this built up? Well, this was the first line, then a new line here, etc., etc. So now we're getting closer to what we want, but we're not done yet. Because what happened now is we have here these lines, but we should convert this again into an array, because these here are multiple values in this single line here. So it's like a table cell. So we have our table row, and now we should have our table cell. So that's what we're going to do next here. So we have this here, we have this table data. What we can do is the following. Then what we want to do here, we want to split these individually here. So we're going to use here a for each, because we're going to loop through all of these items. So we say for every item, or for every table row, or basically here, we're going to splice them, or sorry, splice is not the correct term, but split them again, but specifically based on the comma value here. So that's what we're going to do right now. So we say here, we can say the following table. I'm going to grab the table, which is this item here, which already split everything, and then we say here table dot, then say for each, and then for each we'll say the following. For every row that we have, we want to do the following. So we say here constant, and this will be a column. For every row, we want to do row dot split, and we split it based on the comma here. Make sure that this is a string value. So basically we say we want to go in every row and split in the row the individual values here. Alright, so once we have this here, then we can say here console.log. We can grab here the column, save that, and then we refresh, click on that, and now you can see here they have been split individually for every single value. The first one is the year, and then you have the values here. Alright, so they're still in a string. We can convert them into an integer, but it doesn't matter in this case. Chart.js can read them, but if you want to, we can always say parse int eventually when we're going to create the array. Because basically what we need to do here is we need to get down every single one of those to change this here down. And then we also want to grab all the values here to draw the line. So that's what we need to do now. And these are just arrays. So what we need to do now is we have now this plain text that we converted into an array, or we split them into an array, but now we need to create our own array with the exact matches of the values that are matching in these columns here. Alright, so that's what we're going to do next here. So we have all of this here, and what we can do is the following. So let's say we want to grab the year first. To create the year, and we're already looping through these, as you can see, because we are in a for each already. So this is quite nice. So in here we can say constant year, and with this constant year we can say the following. What exactly we want to grab, or which array value in this case? Well, it is column 0 basically. So we're going to grab this one here, and we say here we have the column 0. We say this here, year, and this will be eventually the year. We say column 0. Alright, so if we do this again, console log dot column 0, and make sure that we have here column, with a semicolon, here as well, semicolon. If I save this now and refresh, we should see now every year extracted here. As you can see, this is working nicely. What I want now is, of course, I want to push this specific value, but to do this, we need to create a proper array. So I'm going to go up here and just create the array with a constant, and then we can say here, this will be the year, well, what could be the year or the labels, because this will be part of the X values here. So we say labels equals blank. So there's no values in there. But then what we're going to say here is labels dot push equal, and then, oh sorry, not equal, when we say push, and in parentheses, and then we're going to grab the year value. So once we did this, this can be also semicolon here, you can say here console.log, and let's grab the labels here now. If I do this, we should see here, I'm going to hide all of these consoles for now, and as well this one here, so we have a lot of these consoles, I notice. Save that, refresh. If I click now here, we get a whole collection here. Alright, so now you can see we have some issues here, and this is the issue. Well, we see here the string issue, and this doesn't matter much. But we see we have these here. So what we can do, and I guess this one has really no value, because let's look at this. If I go here back, the first one is only one value, and it's just like the title of the file itself. It means nothing. What we could do here is to slice this away. or basically remove it from the array. So that's what we can do. So let's start to do that first. Let's remove the first item here. So we have this split item here, or the split. Then we can say as well, we're going to slice, and what we want to slice is the very first value. So that's what we're going to do. We say dot, and then we say here, slice, oh, slice, not splice, but slice without the P, number 1. If I save this now, we can refresh, and if I press this, there we are. Alright, so now we have this, and you say, well, wait, we have also the year. Don't worry about that, we're going to play around with that, because we will be needing that value. If we slice this specific value, we will lose later as well all of these values here, and these are needed for the title later on. So we don't want to remove this from the entire for each loop, or basically from the table data. We don't want to remove that, because if not, we cannot use it anymore. But what we want to do later on is modify the array just to a certain point to remove that specific value. And that is easier than deleting, than slicing this. Because if we would do this, we will not have anymore the names in here. Because then we have this, we have all of that, but we cannot extract anymore these values. And these are still necessary. And the only way would be is to create another same one of these to put it in there, but that would be too redundant. We could do it just a bit more efficient. Alright, so that's the reason why we're not adjusting it. We leave that in there for now. So what we're going to do now is the following. I'm going to create the others. So let's create the others here. So if you understand, we have the labels here, and we need to make 3 different lines. So you can probably guess that we're going to make here 3 extra arrays, and all of these arrays can be one of the items. So we can say here, maybe stock data number 1, stock data number 2, and then we have stock data number 3. Alright, so they have no values yet, but we can just copy this, and we can do the same methodology here. I'm going to remove all of these excess here, just to keep it clean. And then we say the following here. So we're going to say here, this is related to the stock data, and then we can say here, what we can do here is the following. And what we want to do is we want to have this here, maybe we can say stock price. So stock price number 1, which would be the value of the single item of every one of those individually, will be, this will be column 1. Oh, no, not this one, but that one here, column 1, because it's this value here. Then the other one, exactly the same. I'm going to copy that. And we say here, number 3, number 2. Same story here, number 2, number 3. Alright, so if you're wondering why not number 0, well, number 0 we did for the year here in array count of number 0. That's the reason why. So it's 0 base for arrays. Alright, so we have this here, same story here. We're going to just push this, and we're going to push this in total 3 copies of those. And then we say stock price here. And we have this one saved. And then we're going to go here. Alright, so if I click on this, you can see here now we get all of those. Alright, we need to push. Oh, of course, I have these are redundant. Don't do that. Copy that, copy this, and copy that one. Save, refresh, try it again. We get all of these data here. And of course, I realize we don't have the console log, but I guess if I would just get one of those just to check, it should show the values here. Alright, so we get the values here. 1, 2, 3. Do we get all of these? Yes, that's it. There we are. So we have all these values here, and I can see it repeats it multiple times, but that's alright. I'll check later on what's going on there, but it's supposed to be only once. Is it? It shows multiple. Alright. We'll check later on with that, just to be sure. Stock price, column 1, 2, 3. There we are. Just to make sure what we have. Alright, so we have this here now, and I'm going to just test it because I'm surprised that this is here multiple times. It is like repeating probably. Oh, of course, I understand why it's repeating. Sorry about this. The reason why it's repeating is, of course, we're in the for each loop. That's why it repeats. If we're going to do it in here, and then we do the console log, we will see eventually it will work nicely. So we have this one, we have the push. Oh, that one is fine. And then we have here the console log for the stock data labels. Refresh, click on this. There we are. We have this now only once. All right. So we had a lot of confusion, but don't worry about it. We're not done with that. All right. Next part. So what we're going to do now is basically this here needs to move up here. So basically we have this here, and it's an asynchronous function. It knows there's an asynchronous function, or it expects something else. But of course we right now didn't indicate anything else. What I want to do here is we want to check this one or grab this one here. To grab this, we need to have here a return value. This is important. So we say here the following. We want to say here return. And this return will be the following items. Basically the labels, comma, the stock data 1, 2, 3, and 4. Or sorry, 1, 2, and 3. And then what we have as well, we do a comma. What we could do as well, we need later on, and so we just prepared it in advance, we need later on to grab this specific value as well. And that should be prepared as well. So what I say here, instead of stock data, we can just say here one with stock name. What I'm going to do here is constant stock name 1 equals, for now, just going to give it a basic character letter. And later on, we're going to extract that correct value out of it. So we say this, stock name, comma, number 2, and comma, number 3. Here, semicolon. If I save this now, nothing will happen eventually, alright, so it all works fine. But what we need here is to trigger it now. So what we're going to do here is eventually the following. We go in here, and this is how we're going to now also activate this specific function here. We're going to say the following. We say constant, and maybe here we can say here constant data points. And the data point was basically this here as well. All of the data that we have here. Where was that? The data point, I thought we had them here somewhere. We don't have it, but basically we're going to give this function as well a term, which is the data point. Basically it consists of all the data points here, because it will loop through all of this and then does and extract certain values here. So we say data points equals, and then we say await get data. And what we really did here is the following. The async function can only work if there's an await, or at least an await can only work if there's an async function. So what it really does is this. Load this, but then it loads this part as well. It says, okay, I need to first wait to get the values from this specific function before I can continue on drawing the chart. This is very important. So if I save this now, if I refresh here, alright, it still works normal. But now what we're going to do here is the following. We're going to get the first one, which is eventually the labels here. So we're going to say here in the labels, no, I don't want that. I want to say labels, comma, but then we say here, not labels only, comma, but we get it from the data points. So basically in the data points function, or in the data points constant, which is a function that runs through everything, then get the dot labels. Alright. If I save this now and refresh, we can see here now we get a lot of items, including certain things that probably is not what we want. So I have to check here what's going on. We're going to the values here. However, you do see it start to connect, but let me double check here what is going on. We have the stock data here. Alright, that should be apparently the years, or the year. If I save that now we get all the years here. Alright, that looks nice. So we got this one first. So now it works correctly. Next thing what we need to do here is the data here. And now the data here, you probably understand, is the same methodology. The only thing what we want to do now is get not the stock name, but we want to get the stock data 1. Let's grab that one, and we go in here, we say this stock data 1. There we are, we get all of these values here. Alright, so we're getting closer. We see still here this issue. Don't worry about it, we're going to work on that one. If we have this here, all of these values should be correct if I compare this with our item here, 30, 31, and then let's say the last one would be 140. So 30 is the first one, and the last one will be 140. Let's confirm this. 140 and 30. Alright, so we got this here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this for now 2 more times to create the other lines. Comma, paste, comma, paste. Alright, and just give it some different colors here. It makes sense. So I'm just going to get a single color here, clean that up. Alright, we have that. Next one will be this. This can be 0.2, that's fine. Here, another one, we can just grab this one here. That will get the, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first one, that will be the red value. So we have here as well. Alright, and then finally here, I'll just get the second value, it should be a blue one. Alright, that cleans it up. Here as well, the second value. And there we are. So if I save this now, refresh, alright, you can see there's multiple lines, but they're on top of each other because we have the same value. Let's change that now. I'm going to change these. If I save this now and refresh, we can see we get now 3 different lines. And we have all of these different data here, which is all correct. Nice. So what I want to do next is basically clean up this here. So remember, this here consists of the value, or basically not the value, but the chart or the stock name or the company name, as you can say. So that needs to be removed here. And for that, we can basically use shift, if I'm not mistaken. We will remove the first value of the array, and we can also put it, and then afterwards we can put the value in here. And this is the reason why I don't want to delete it directly with the slice here, or what we could do here. And we can slice it as well, doesn't matter. But I guess the most logical thing here would be, let's see here, this one here. I'm going to grab this, all 3 of those, or maybe there's only this. And the only thing what I want to do here is dot shift, not shirt, sorry, shift. And what does shift do? It removes the very first value from the array, which is in this case the one we need to remove. If you need to remove a very specific one, slice would be more useful, because then you can target a specific item in the array. Alright, so we got this now. I'm going to paste this in here, paste that in there. Number 2, number 3, alright. Let's try again. There we are. So now you can see remove the space here. So the next thing, and or what we have to do here, is this year value needs to be removed, because we have here a conflict because the numbers are not properly aligned. So we can say as well here for the label, or labels, dot shift. So this is why it's very useful to understand arrays in JavaScript, so you can use them as well in your chart. Next, now we have this. What I want to do now is I want to change these items here, or this specific value here. So to do this, we had these values here, but of course if I can put it in here. We have this weekly sales, let's say this dot data points. So data points dot stock name, that's correct. Here, do the same, comma, stock name number 2. Make sure you remove the quotation. And here the same thing, stock name number 3, comma. Save that, refresh. Alright, so we've got this. You can see here the names are changing, but of course we have them still hard-coded in here. So what we need to do here now, so I just told you about slice. What we can do with slices, we can say which value we want to remove and which one we want to keep. In our case, here with slice, we have this value here that says remove the very first value. And what we want to do now is we want to remove, we don't want to remove the first value, we want to keep the first value and then remove everything else. So basically, we're going to use slice. We have this here, but we need to get this specific value first. And here we can just copy all of those. 2v3, 2. And here, all we want to do is here is a slice. We say keep the first value, remove everything else. So I want to only keep the first value, and I only want to keep one value. So this here indicates where in the index you want to keep, which one in the index. And then you say remove and remove all else afterwards. Alright? So that's what we're doing here. So that's the one we want to keep. If I save this now, then refresh, there you are. Oh, do I have everything correctly? I see I have an issue here, and the issue is clearly makes sense. All right, so why does this happen? And this is the problem here, of course. We're adjusting this immediately. So I want to cut this out. I'm going to move this above, because what is happening here, and this is very important, because when you modify the array, you can see here you have like what we call a calculated effect. It calculates based on what is previously remembering. It remembers that we removed one, and that's why the slice here gets the very first value, that's number 30. So if I do this now and I refresh, now we didn't do any adjustments yet on the official array. And the only thing what we want to do is we want to slice a certain value out of it and give that a new value. That's why you have a stock name here. So this will not be in conflict now. It works nicely here. It grabs the chart. Beautiful. So this here, of course, we can remove this. This is no value anymore. And now we have this all nicely connected. We refresh this, and so with this here, this is a way how you can use the CSV file to connect that. And what would happen here, imagine this, if you would have a new value in here. So let's say this, and then we say 150, we say 260 and 30. Save that, refresh, and now we grab all of these. Do we have any adjustments here? I don't see any adjustments here, so let's double check here. Am I correct? Okay, save that. Let's do it again. Alright. Okay, I figure out what it is. Let's do a hard reload just to see if it will remember. And there you are. So it grabs. So this is important here. Maybe sometimes when you add up data, it doesn't load immediately. So what you need to do is you have to do a right click here and then a hard reload. If that doesn't work, that sometimes happens as well, there's another option. This is especially for you for testing. You can do it in here. It's in the settings. So we have to click on the settings, and then we have to scroll down a bit. Let me open up this a little bit more. Scroll down here, and we have to look for here a very specific item, which would be network force. No. Disable cache. This is the one. So disable cache while in DevTools. I don't recommend you to use this much, because you can see here, if I do this now and I refresh, what happens is it loads slower because it needs to reload everything consistently. By default, Chartjs is now loading a bit slower than normally, and the reason why is very simple. Because it needs to wait for the response here, but you can see the difference here in loading compared to with the cache disabled. So that's one of the options you have, especially if it just doesn't want to. If the hard reload doesn't work, then that would the disable cache would be the only way to do it, to force it. All right. So that is basically what we did here, and this is how you can use the CSV file to connect with your Chart.js. So if you like this video, there's some other videos that I would highly recommend to check as well, which is basically a Chart.js array series focused specifically on every array that you can use and need. And this is really useful because right now what you've seen there, we have to modify the data. And cleaning data is a very important part with data management and with charts, basically, because if the data is not clean, or you have dirty data, that's what they call it, it will not properly render a chart. So this series here covers 19 videos, and it's very useful about all kind of things you can do with arrays.